They're calling for a series of political reforms, and most explosively, they're also calling for a reform of the very powerful monarchy here. The political reforms sort of date back to earlier this year in bitterness that a popular opposition party was disbanded. The protesters are calling for the government of General Prayuth Chan-ocha, who is a former coup leader, who is now the country's prime minister after elections last year, to step down. They're calling for a redrafting of the constitution under which General Prayuth was elected, claiming that it created a very unfair playing field. And they're calling for an end to harassment of activists, and a number of the student leaders here have been arrested and charged with sedition over the last few weeks. But then added to the mix, and a very potent addition to the mix, are these calls for reform of the royalty. The royal family here is a revered institution in terms of the its official status. It's protected by very strict lèse-majesté laws, which are supposed to prevent any criticism of the senior royals. But some students are saying it's time for reform of their accountability, of their finances, and of their political influence.
And these are not the first protests in Bangkok, are they? What are different about today's demonstrations compared with what we've seen recently?
Yes, there have been weeks of protests, mainly on campuses and colleges and high schools even. But what we've got this time is not just students, but a lot of older sort of activists who've been on the streets over the decades of political turmoil in Thailand. So you have a much more mixed group, and they've chosen two highly symbolic locations. They met initially at a university, Thammasat University, which was the scene of a massacre in 1976 of left-wing students. And so it's a very symbolically laden location, and they have marched from there across the road to the Royal Parade Grounds, which are right next to the Grand Palace, and are historically the setting for royal ceremonies, for royal cremations, and they are reclaiming that ground for the people. At the moment, the police are watching. They're telling them to disperse. They are warning them that the gathering is illegal on public health grounds. They haven't actually stepped in to try and take any action against them yet, but it is relatively early hours, and the students have said they're going to camp there tonight, and they're going to march on an undisclosed location tomorrow to deliver their demands. So there's a lot of mileage yet in these protests, and certainly there is a scope for confrontation later.
Philip Sherwell there. Well, that's